Mayor-elect John Ewing Jr. joins us now. Welcome, Your Honor, to be.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me.
Mr. Mayor-elect, it is very good to see you. Many people have asked, how did you win this race? And last week, this is a post from the Nebraska Democratic Party on X, and we're going to put the picture of this ad up. And it says that Gene is focused on potties, John is focused on fixing potholes. Economics are at the top of people's minds, including potholes all over Omaha. Ewing will make lives better by focusing on issues that impact all of us. Jean Stothert and her allies are sending hateful mail and pushing creepy bathroom bills. Is this how you won the race?
That's one of the ways. But the reality is we focused on quality of life issues. We focused on the things that were important to the people of Omaha, and we won convincingly.
And when you talked to those voters, what were the things that were top of mind for them?
Well, we talked about economic development, and in particular, intentional economic development in our underserved communities in North and South Omaha, where we have a large Black population in North Omaha and a large Latino population in South Omaha. And that resonated not only with those residents, but with people across the city. We also talked about public transportation. We talked about decent and affordable housing. Omaha is going to need at least 18,000 new affordable housing units by 2030. We also talked about just the basics of city services, street repair, police, fire, snow removal, all those type of things that people care about. I don't think they cared about the bathrooms. I was never asked about that in this whole campaign, and I was campaigning about 15 months.
So, Mayor-elect, it really was about the price of eggs, if you will, as a representation of the things that we were told were important to voters in the presidential election, apparently still remain true. So no matter how much you want to go out as an opponent and make a cultural argument, people still have to pay their bills. They still have to raise their kids. They still have to run their businesses. And they got to make sure that the services that the city provides them are there. You have the Washington Post noting that this was likely a test case for voter attitudes, and that's important. The election was a fresh test of voter attitudes in a politically competitive slice of the country. The seat held by Stothert is technically nonpartisan, but disquiet over Trump's agenda produced a surge of Democratic energy, reminiscent of the closer-than-expected special elections for Republican-held seats in Florida, and a decisive victory for Democrats in the high-stakes Wisconsin Supreme Court race. I would even go back, Mayor, and say that this reminds me a lot of the energy on the ground in 2009, leading into a very important number of races in the 2010 presidential congressional cycle. How do you see your race in the context of where the country is and where the country is potentially moving, despite all the crazy other stuff that's going on, some of which we talked about on the show tonight? You're on the ground, heartbeat to heartbeat with the citizens of your community. What are you hearing?
Well, here's one of the things that we did in our campaign, and that was we pointed out the chaos that was happening in Washington, D.C. We pointed out some of the things that were truly impacting people and hurting them when it came to potential cuts in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those type of things. And what we saw from the people in Omaha was that they cared about those issues, and they truly wanted a mayor who was going to stand up and fight for them and fight with them to be able to have those type of quality of life issues addressed. And so I very frankly said to them that I'm going to stand with them against the chaos, and we're going to get some things done.
You know, Mr. Mayor-elect, first of all, ever since I moved to D.C., people always say, oh, there's black people in Nebraska, and now I'm going to have to tell them yes, and the mayor is also black, including the mayor of Omaha. But I think that this race was actually very, very important. because Omaha is, I think it's most notably in District 2, known nationally as the Blue Dot. But it is going to be one of the most hotly contested races next year for the midterm elections. Omaha is a microcosm, I like to think, of many places across the country. As everything. You have wealthy suburbs, if you will. You have conservative communities, progressive communities, and people who would describe themselves as living in the middle, burgeoning African-American population, a Latino population. All of these issues that have been touch points across the country converge in the city of Omaha. And I think that there are a lot of lessons that people can take from this race and assumptions, frankly, that they make about people that don't live on the East or West Coast and really, really pull the layers back to make some decisions about what happens next year. I'm wondering your take on that. And if you think Don Bacon is going to end up running for re-election. You yourself at one point were a candidate for Congress some years ago.
Sure. I agree with you. I think one of the things, if you start peeling back the layers and you really look at this, it really was about those basic quality of life issues. It was about the chaos and people wanting certainty in their lives. And that's what I believe government should be providing, is a certainty so that people can raise their families, they can run their businesses, they can make decisions knowing what is going to happen instead of worrying about tariffs and worrying about the cost of things and worrying about Social Security. So I think the more Democrats can talk about certainty, the more they can meet people where they're at and talk about those economic issues, I think you have a chance to win races across this country. We just have to stay focused on the message, because right now there's a lot of uncertainty and there's chaos. And if we can counteract that chaos and show sensibility, we have a chance to win. And that's what I did. I showed a lot of sensibility and a lot of common sense in looking at how we were going to govern. You don't care about bathrooms when you just ran into a pothole that did $400 or $500 damage.
Breaking news, President Trump's legislative agenda, what he calls his one big beautiful bill, just failed to make it out of a key committee. 5 Republicans jumped ship and joined Democrats to vote down the bill. Our smart reporters are here, including and especially our all-star Capitol Hill reporter, Lauren Fox. Lauren, I want to bring you in, but I first want to play a soundbite from Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, who has been kind of leading the charge on concerns about his fellow Republicans and this bill.
I have to now admonish my colleagues on this side of the aisle. This bill falls profoundly short. It does not do what we say it does with respect to deficits. The fact of the matter is, on the spending, what we're dealing with here on tax cuts and spending, a massive front-loaded deficit increase. And if we would reform Medicaid, we could actually get to the core of the problem. But we refuse to do it. And I'm not going to sit here and say that everything is hunky-dory when this is the budget committee. This is the budget committee. We are supposed to do something to actually result in balanced budgets. We are writing checks we cannot cash, and our children are going to pay the price. So I am a no on this bill unless serious reforms are made today, tomorrow, Sunday. We're having conversations as we speak, but something needs to change, or you're not going to get my support.
Lauren, he's pretty emphatic.
Yeah, and let's just put this into context. The Speaker wanted to move forward with this bill, get it to the House floor, pass it before the Memorial Day recess. That's next Thursday. Obviously, this is a huge setback for the Speaker. I'm really surprised that they ended up having this vote in committee, because these holdouts had been voicing concerns over the course of the last 24 hours. There have been numerous meetings, including Steve Scalise, the majority leader, meeting with these members in the ante room off the committee as it was ongoing. When they came back into the room, each of them spoke. It was very clear they still had concerns, still had opposition. They want to see some of these spending cuts sped up rather than delayed into later years. There's a reason Republicans did that, because it does take time to implement some of these things. But that's not enough for these Freedom Caucus members. And unlike past budget committees, this budget committee is full of conservatives. And that has really potentially slowed down this process.
So the spending cuts and the demand for more and earlier spending cuts is a big part of the reason why this big bill is stuck right now. Another is the fact that to pay for some of the spending cuts that are already in there, the Republicans are putting cuts to Medicaid. Right now, the changes to Medicaid include adding a work requirement for able-bodied adults, implementing stricter eligibility rules, like re-verifying who is eligible every 6 months, adding co-payments, cutting funding for states that allow undocumented people to enroll. I want to go to Tom Foreman, because Tom, you're at the magic wall, and I'd like for you to walk through how Medicaid actually works currently, who it covers, and what it costs.
Yeah, and think about those changes you just mentioned there as we go through it. When you talk about Medicaid, it is a government health insurance program for low-income and disabled Americans, including children. It's not Medicare, which is generally for older people. Medicaid for people who are struggling. 72 million people. They pay little, if any, out of pocket for their care. It was established in 1965 by Congress. Who's on it? 4 out of 10 children in this country. 1 out of 6 U.S. adults. People with a median income of $36,000 a year. So not much at all. What does it cover? Usual stuff: births, hospital stays, nursing home, home health care, vaccinations, prescription drugs. This is where it gets sticky when you get to the cost of it. It is paid for more by the federal government, $606 billion in funding a year, less by state governments, but it is a mixed program out there. It is not the most expensive entitlement program, about 9% to 10% of the budget. The work requirement question, interesting. 64% of the people who are getting it right now already work.
Donald lost that election. That is Trump's loss. It is. It's Trump's loss. And it's his loss for at least a couple reasons. One, it's his loss because Donald's policies have failed. He was not elected in November. I mean, he won the election, but he wasn't elected. Biden and Harris, and whether this is fair or not, as Biden's vice president, was thrown out. Trump wasn't elected. It's just America has a crappy two-party system, and under that two-party system, if you throw out the bums often, whether they deserve it or not. Even if it's like Biden wasn't great, but the voters don't always ask themselves, is the alternative worst? It's the alternative is the alternative, and we're going with it. And he should have had the humility to understand that and be like, what I'm actually pushing is not popular. It won't work and it's not popular. And so why did they lose? That's one of the reasons. Another reason is that Trump, the Republican Party, is now the MAGA cult. And they struggle down ballot, even when things aren't going that badly for them in the national narrative. They struggle down ballot because the party is now all about Trump. And so when it's not about Trump, other Republicans struggle. Whether they're more moderate, whether they're more MAGA, they all seem to struggle a little bit. This is the context Trump has created. Many of you remember this. Tell me if you remember this. If I have I don't have a whole lot of really young viewers. But for the younger viewers, 10, 15 years ago even, the Republicans were the high turnout party. Every election except a presidential election, the Democrats underperformed. And now, because Trump has made the GOP the party of uneducated Trump cultists, now the Democrats have the edge in all the midterm and special and emergency elections. And it's not going away.